Okay, hello everyone. Today I'm here with Dr. Jean Marc, and we're going to talk about genetics, autoimmune conditions, and Hashimoto's. And the reason why I decided to invite Dr. Jean Marc was I was impressed by all the knowledge he had around the MTHFR gene. And I know that many of you have talked about this gene. Many of you have had issues around the specific genes. So he's going to go into that detail today. And he's an ND from Los Angeles, and he's also French. So you can ask him any questions. He's practiced for 15 years in this, and he's very specialized when it comes to genetics. So Dr. Jean Marc, welcome. And I want to know what got you into this? Why genetics?
Okay, thank you for having me first. So yes, why did I come into genetics? Is because after years and years of practice and training as a medical doctor, I just realized that conventional medicine was not providing all the answers I was looking for and all the answers my patients were looking for. So I decided to search, to look for more answers. And this is the reason why I decided to first move to England and to become a practitioner in the UK. And then I realized that was the same system, conventional medicine with limited ways to help patients. And then I moved to the US, and then I learned about naturopathic medicine that helps having a holistic approach to health, not thinking about a single system. So let's say you have a thyroid problem, you go and see your primary care physician, and then your primary care physician refers you to your endocrinologist. But endocrinologists, they are just specialized in one thing, which is hormones, so diabetes, thyroid, adrenal, and that's it. And you don't take into account all that you have to consider when helping patients with this thyroid condition. So I wanted to learn more about how can I help my patient in a holistic way, taking into account lifestyle, diet, medication, and how everything interacts all together. And then I came across genetics, and I was intrigued by what I was learning about our genes and how genes can be improved, how we can have strengths and weaknesses. So I learned about that. I did a lot of research. I read a lot of articles. I did a lot of training. So now I'm feeling very confident in helping my patient understand and overcome any genetic weaknesses and strengths they may have. And we formulate a very specific plan based on the genes we find through testing. And it's more, you have to understand that genes are not disease. They are just susceptibilities, meaning when you're born with a set of genes that you inherit from parents. Your mother give you half, your father give you the other half. And then you have this set up deck of cards, which are your genes. But you can manipulate those genes with simple changes in lifestyle, diet, so the genes will never be turned on and will never have a direct impact on your health. And this is what I'm helping my patient with. Understand what are their gene strengths and weaknesses, and we focus either on sometimes strengths and sometimes on weaknesses to improve their health.
Wow. So, and you mostly, you have a lot of thyroid and adrenal patients, and when they find out, they have specific genes, and maybe you can go into exactly which genes that these women should watch out for, and where they can even get started once they find out.
Yeah, so there are some very specific genes for the immune system. When we're talking about Hashimoto's thyroid disease, so it's an autoimmune disease. So we want to look at some specific genes that regulate your immune system. And if those genes are affected, so then you become more susceptible to autoimmune disease. Then you have also some specific thyroid genes that affect how the thyroid gland functions. So is it slow to use some proteins needed to make the hormones? Are they slow to move to one step to another step to make hormone active or inactive? So, and then you have your super genes, so the one that rule them all, which is the MTHFR gene. Why do I say that? It's because MTHFR gene is responsible for what we call methylation. What is methylation? Is using a simple atom of carbons with 3 hydrogen, which is a methyl group that we learn in chemistry. We put that, so the MTHFR gene put that on a specific vitamins, folate, that will become active. So you eat your food that contains folate, this MTHFR enzyme activate the folate, and the folate will have plenty of effect on your body. And that will include repairing your DNA and your cells. So when we think about inflammation, so it's going to repair and decrease inflammation. It's going to also affect your brain chemistry. So when we think about a slow functioning thyroid, we also have some sort of sluggish brain. So if we don't support methylation, we may not get the result with just thyroid treatment with hormone replacement. And then MTHFR also affects detoxification. And detoxification or environmental triggers are one of the well-recognized factors that trigger autoimmune thyroid disease, Hashimoto's.
So, yeah, because a lot of the women in this organization, they know they have the MTHFR gene, but which specific mutations should they really watch out for? And what can they really do about it? I mean, even if they find out they have these specific mutations, it's just information, right?
Yes, so it's everything starts with understanding your lifestyle, your nutritional status, so what you eat on a daily basis, and do you have enough of the nutrients that are needed for proper function of the thyroid gland to produce thyroid hormones? Do we have in our lifestyle and diet potential triggers that will increase inflammation in the body and then lead to overwhelming the immune system, so it will lead to autoimmune activation of our defense. So autoimmune disease are an overwhelming effect that goes beyond our capacities to maintain our immune system. So the immune system will start to recognize food or hormones as not being from our own body, and will start to attack those hormones or those vitamins and destroy them. This can happen in the thyroid gland, but it can also happen anywhere in the body. And where we are also very susceptible when we have Hashimoto's is also the gut. The gut is the first interface where food comes in contact with our body. If our gut is not healthy or is inflamed because we feed our body with food that can trigger inflammation, because we don't know, but we might be susceptible or sensitive to gluten or dairy, so we're going to create inflammation. And over time, this inflammation will start to activate our immune system to the point that sometimes our immune system do not recognize well what is foreign, not from our body, to our own cells and start to attack our own cells. And this is the process of any autoimmune disease.
So, like a lot of the women, they with this MTHFR gene, what are the specific mutations that cause these issues?
So for MTHFR mutation, so you have two main MTHFR variants. One is called 677, and the other one, the second most important, is 1298. So the numbers are just location on the chromosome 1 where you have this gene. So the most important maybe is the 677 because it is known to have positive correlation with autoimmune disease, chronic disease, cardiovascular disease, and also cognitive decline. So the second one is more a regulation of cells and cell repair. Maybe also it affects brain chemistry to some extent, but it's probably not as severe. So we need to test for that. It can be done with a simple blood draw at your primary care physician office. It can be done also with a cheek swab where you collect saliva, or you spit in a tube. So you have some consumer-to-consumer companies that will offer this type of test. So you will know if you're a carrier of those genetic variants.
So, you know, and like women, a lot of them have weight loss issues, you know, and a lot of them blame it on these genes that they have because it makes them harder to lose the weight with Hashimoto's. Is that just a myth, or how true is that?
Well, so I would say that for Hashimoto's and autoimmune disease in general, the genes that are directly linked to weight gain and or weight loss or difficulty to lose weight are not the genes involved in Hashimoto's or other autoimmune disease. The genes that are involved into weight gain in those autoimmune conditions are more related to my body's ability to detoxify, to remove toxins, whether it is infection, chemicals. So we're thinking about, for thyroid in particular, a few things that are not well tolerated for the thyroid, and those chemicals or metals are chlorine, bromide, and fluoride. So we need to have proper detoxification to have a clean body. And so then when the body is clean, the weight loss is easy because your body can function optimally at 100% instead of maybe 30, 40, 50% because of the toxicity. So treating any autoimmune disease and Hashimoto's in general, it's all about cleaning up the inside, removing toxins with proper diet, proper supplementation to focus. And MTHFR is also involved in that detoxification. So we may want to achieve weight loss, first focus on how can we detoxify the body, removing chemicals and support detoxification. So when we talk about diet, so it's going to be to have a clean diet, anti-inflammatory diet, limiting conventional produce, so consuming mostly organic produce because chemicals and pesticides. So you have to deal with that. So your body is using resources, nutrients to detoxify. One of them that patients with thyroid issues most likely know is selenium. So selenium is an important mineral for thyroid because it converts T4 into T3, T4 being inactive and T3 is the active thyroid hormones. So, but selenium is also needed to detoxify. So then what happens when you're toxic and you don't know, your body is going to consume a lot of selenium to help cleaning the body to the detriment of your thyroid. So you will end up with a slow functioning thyroid, not because you do anything wrong, it's because your needs are channeled towards detoxification instead of supporting the thyroid. So if we want to improve energy in the body, which is the base to lose weight, so to have cells that consume energy. So because energy comes from carbohydrate, protein, but also fat. So we need to have proper function of the cells, not 50, 40% function.
Right. And like when you talk about detoxification, I mean, for me, I use like my way to detoxify has always been two things: Epsom salt baths and
Mm-hmm.
coffee enemas have helped me a lot. And maybe I do that like twice a week. What is like how often should someone detoxify? Do you have the body detoxify itself, or do you
Mm-hmm.
recommend using these sort of external resources?
I think we live in a toxic environment. So the answer would have been different 20 years ago or 40 years ago. But today, I think that supplementing with some specific vitamins and minerals that support detoxification, so meaning the daily function of your liver to process all the waste that circulate in the blood and neutralize the toxins, dump them into the bile, then the bile goes into your gut, and then when you go to the bathroom, you remove the toxin that way from your stool. So coffee enemas, they help moving stuff in the bowel. So this is why it's helping to detoxify, because you have elimination that way. So magnesium is also important in detoxification process. So Epsom salt bath is a very good idea because it's gentle. You don't have to take it orally, and it helps. Why do we need magnesium? Well, for the thyroid is also very helpful. But second, our current diet is deficient in magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
So we tend not to consume enough greens, enough veggies, enough legumes, nuts and seeds that are high in minerals. So most of the time we end up with not having enough magnesium, so slowing down many of our processes. And then coffee or tea that contain caffeine, we tend to consume too much coffee to get through our day. And then coffee is known to deplete magnesium storage. So
Yeah.
in today's world, so we need to do something daily. And if we want to do things also optimally, maybe considering a cleanse, maybe springtime, after the winter time, maybe twice a year could be a good thing to consider. So what's a cleanse is eating well, exercising, give our body a rest against all the environmental toxins we are exposed to, and replenish the body with the right nutrients. So when you want to detox, you want to make sure you have all the nutrients in, because without nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, you cannot detox, and you end up with maybe having a risk of becoming more toxic. And there are some genes that you should always look for when you're trying to detox. In 2020, a proper detoxification plan should always include some genes to look at what we're doing. So that includes MTHFR, that includes PEMT, that include ACE-OD2 and others, and GPX, which is important for selenium and for thyroid. And our vitamin D genes are also important for that.
So yeah, maybe you can even go into like the other question I get a lot is hair loss, and hair loss being like genetic for a lot of these women. And and it like a lot of them go on this thyroid medication, which I personally believe causes hair loss. But like, is this something that is genetic, and can they switch it?
Well, so when you look for thyroid health, you want to make sure you have first the right diagnosis. So Do I have the right test? Do I know if I have an autoimmune condition? Because autoimmune condition can more often lead to hair loss. Do you have enough of some of the important nutrients that can also slow down everything where our body is doing, including hair growth? So thyroid, when you're underactive thyroid, your overall metabolism is slower. So hair loss can result from that. Hair loss can result also because you're lacking iron, because our metabolism is slower to absorb it. And also methylation or the MTHFR gene can play a role. One of them, the 1298, can play a role into the reason why we're not making enough new cells. So we cannot renew our hair, so we start losing hair and it's not growing back. And in most cases, there are a specific type of folate, so vitamin B9 supplement that you can take to palliate that. Why we're treating and improving overall health and thyroid health.
I see. And when it comes to like clean diet and lifestyle changes that you've mentioned, a lot of the women I've worked with, they say that their diet is extremely clean and very gluten-free, and but they're still not seeing results. And what do you say to patients that come in saying that they have a very clean diet, but it's not helping?
Well, so of course, we go through an analysis of the nutrient that those individuals are getting from their food. And then we look at possible deficiencies, possible increased need for very specific ones. Of course, I mentioned already the detox and the detoxification. So things cannot improve if our body is still inflamed. And maybe that's also because we have some genetic weaknesses that prevent us to heal as fast as we would like. So we have to support those very specific genetic weaknesses so you can start feeling better. I was mentioning selenium because there are a specific gene that prevent you to get better. I was mentioning the vitamin D gene and vitamin D level. That's important to make sure we have that on board. And the other thing to consider, and that comes from 2000 studies or multiple studies from an Italian doctor, MD Alessio Fasano, who was able to demonstrate that all autoimmune disease have three important components. You need to have a trigger, environmental trigger. You need to have some genetic predisposition. And third, you most likely have some leaky gut or issues with digestion. You may not feel it because sometimes you feel that I'm digesting well, but because I'm consuming every day a food that my body is sensitive to, I have daily symptoms that I cannot really identify, or I have chronic inflammation, low level of inflammation in my gut that is not sufficient to have symptoms, to lead to symptoms, but they are sufficient to reduce absorption of the nutrients.
I see. Yeah.
So even though the diet is perfect, you're not absorbing what you're getting from your healthy diet. So you end up with being depleted on those critical nutrients.
I see. So how do you go about like working with like what are some of the results you've achieved with women who have Hashimoto's?
So first, the most important, so we want to make sure that we have the right diagnosis. So we monitor with the right test. So I have a story from when I was practicing in England. So there, the conventional care when you have patient with thyroid, underactive thyroid, is to monitor just one marker, TSH. And if TSH is within range, you're good. We don't do any other testing. So we want to make sure we have the right tests to be able to monitor closely and to make sure that we are within the range. So this is the foundation. So then we look at drugs. So what type of medication are you taking? Are you taking T4, so levothyroxine, or are you taking also T3? And everyone who have autoimmune thyroiditis, Hashimoto's, should be on some amount of T3. So then we look at that. And then third, we're going to look at lifestyle and diet and genetic predisposition. And then there's no reason that we do not get any results when we take the whole picture into account. And we are not focusing on just the lab or the TSH or the dose of T4. So that makes all the difference. And then of course we can move to a step further, looking at the digestion. As another step, looking at the adrenals, so the tiny glands above our kidney that controls cortisol. And stress is also something that has a negative effect on the thyroid.
Yeah, I mean, stress and the adrenals, they did like a number on me. And when I had Hashimoto's, that was my biggest problem, was like the adrenals. And once I fixed the adrenals, my numbers started to bounce back. And I saw that, but I still had the antibodies in my thyroid, which I had like no idea how to get rid of. But I got rid of them naturally without any medication. And
Yes.
And a lot of the women, you know, in this group, they're on diets like the keto diet. But I feel like the keto diet doesn't really, it's not T3 friendly. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that it's better to consider what we call an anti-inflammatory diet. Anti-inflammatory diet, you remove the grains, you remove the soy, you remove nightshades. So why? Because they are pro-inflammatory. When you have pro-inflammation, so you're going to create some inflammation, it's going to increase histamine, and then the body will be on defense mode, defense activation mode, meaning that your immune system is almost ready to attack anything it can see path next to it. So it's gonna exacerbate potentially when you're eating any food that creates inflammation. It's gonna exacerbate your autoimmune response. So your antibodies will go up. So I'm not for any type of diet that restricts too heavily some of the macronutrients. I like the idea of having a well-balanced diet from whole foods, meaning you have to cook yourself, you have to buy fresh ingredients, most likely organic if you can. If you can't, there are some rounded website that will tell you which food is okay to eat conventionally grown and which one are better consumed organic. And you can have a diverse diet, healthy diet, nutrient dense diet that will be beneficial. You don't have to restrict your diet too much. I understand the ketogenic diet, but I think that we don't have to go that far. So healthy diet is fine, anti-inflammatory diet is fine. There are some small variation that we call autoimmune diet, which are small variation. So in which case you remove the soy, you remove the grains and nuts and seeds from it, which I'm not necessarily like too much because you remove a lot of potential sources of omega-3s or omega-6s, which are both important for hormone balance because your hormones, they depend on cholesterol. you want to have diverse way to get healthy fat in your diet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With that, what are your like 3 biggest takeaways for women today?
Well, so good question. So avoid first the 3 enemies of your thyroid: chlorine, fluoride, bromide. Bromide are what we call flame retardants. But in the US, it's still allowed to put bromide in some sodas. So I will not mention the name, but it's orange-green bottle. This drink, it contains bromide. So chlorine, where the chlorine is coming from? It's coming from your shower, from your water supply. So if you have any thyroid issue, you want to use a filter on your shower head just to remove the chlorine. And then third is fluoride. Why should we remove that or be cautious about how much we are exposed to? Is because those 3 chemicals are similar in terms of structure to iodine. And you see the connection with your thyroid. So your body will be fooled and will consider that bromide or chlorine is iodine, will be used to try making hormones, thyroid hormones, and it will stop there. So that's the main thing. And my 2 other recommendations for women with thyroid issues is, well, focus on lifestyle, diet, managing stress. It's true for, unfortunately, it's true for all my patients. So let's have the foundations of health established first. So sleeping enough hours, we detox at night, we remove toxins at night, mostly 95%. So eating well, exercising, and managing stress with whatever you like doing, hobbies, meditation, journaling, yoga. And then something that is not considered very much at the moment is exercise. We are a lot into CrossFit, spin classes. Those intense exercise, they tend to have a negative effect on the thyroid health because they deplete nutrients. So maybe you need to switch to, until your thyroid is healthy again, you need to switch to a more moderate to mild intensity exercise.
Right. Exactly. And I guess in terms of the women wanting to, look more into genetics, where do they start? Like, should they use 23andMe?
I think that's the easiest. So most of my patients, they already have done some sort of genetic testing through these consumer-to-consumer companies, so 23andMe, Ancestry DNA. So you can use the data that you can extract from those companies and put that in a different software, and I can guide my patient, or I can do that for them, so we can have a broader picture and not only looking at MTHFR, but all the other genes I mentioned earlier, the specific genes about the immune system, the thyroid genes, and the detox genes, the brain chemistry genes, so what helps with cognitive health and focus, cell repair. So those platforms will give you more information. So that's probably the cheapest way. It takes time. So the time you order the kit, it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get the result and to start the process. There are also smaller companies that will offer cheek swabs or speed tests. So it could be better to consider those if we are not, you cannot do a speed test. So cheek swab, you rub the inside of your cheek and you send the DNA that way. So they usually offer reports with dietary recommendation, but you have to understand that they are computer based, so they cannot be really individualized at some point. So it's better, you can do both. They are very good. All of them are very good, but it's better if you have a practitioner who's trained in looking at the genes and focus the analysis based on your health concern, rather than having a computer base that will look at the genes the same way for everyone. So we are in 2020 in the precise, individualized medicine era. So we have way more tools, but we have to use the tools the right way.
Love that. So what's one inspirational quote we can sort of get things ending today, and maybe I'll share your website, how they can get in touch with you. And
yeah. So I think that there's a good quote. I don't remember who's coined the term, but so because we're living in a toxic environment, I like this this quote, which is, the solution to pollution is dilution. So it means that we're exposed no matter what we do, but the best way to get rid of those toxins is to flood our body with the right things, the right nutrients, the clean water. And like this, we manage to reduce over time, we dilute the toxins and we get rid of them. Hence, we're improving our health.
love that. I love that. So yeah, I mean, I think detoxing is one of the biggest things, one of the biggest takeaways we have here.
Yeah, and you have to do it the right way. So, and that's why I told you earlier that in 2020, you have to take into account your genetic predisposition or susceptibilities. Can you detox well? Do you have a bit of a hard time detoxifying my body? So, and then you adjust the plan and it will work. There's no reason for the body not to achieve any detoxification, no matter what set of genes you're born with.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing this insightful information. I will share how the ladies can get in touch with you, and hopefully we can have you back again.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. So it was great being with you live today. And yes, I'm looking forward to have another conversation, with you at a later date.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Jean.
Okay, have a great afternoon.